And that's what the book is really. It's, as I say, it's introduction. It's what are the fears? How do we turn them around? And how do we introduce sort of meaningful change really in your business and also in your life so that you more often than not think, I can, as opposed to I can't today. Again, it's very much about clarity and bravery, I think. So that the first piece, the clarity is again, two questions which recur in every single chapter of the book. What is it you really, really want? And the second question, and why is that so important to you that you're prepared to take the brave action needed to make it happen?
Hello, and welcome to episode 210 of the Quiet and Strong podcast, especially for introverts. I'm your host, David Hall, and the creator of quietandstrong.com. This is a weekly podcast dedicated to understanding the strengths and needs of introverts, along with strategies for success. Introversion is not something to fix, but to be embraced. Normally, we'll air each episode on a Monday. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform, leave a review or a rating. That would mean a lot to me and also help others find the show. Tell a friend about the podcast and help get the word out there that introversion is a beautiful thing. Mark Franklin is a speaker, mindset expert, and business strategist with over 20 years' experience supporting business owners to embrace their four fears, the most common barriers preventing them from having the business and life of their dreams. Mark invests deeply in his clients' stories, providing uplifting, relevant, and engaging support to unlock the bravery and belief they need to pursue their happy path to success. The Four Fears programs are designed to move companies, team members, and business owners from inertia to victory and find joy in that journey. Mark's vision is to help others write a better story for themselves and their families. All right. Well, welcome to the Quiet and Strong podcast, Mark. It's so great to have you on today.
Well, thank you, David. It's a real treat. I'm really honoured. So very kind of you.
Yeah. So, we're going to get into the work you do as the Four Fears guy. Tell us about your journey and to the work that you're doing now.
Okay, it's I think it's an interesting story. So my background is design, design and communication. I was a graphic designer. That's what I studied at uni, and I've always been passionate about stories and storytelling. And I always saw my role as a designer of being sort of taking my client's story and sort of translating it in a way that really resonated with the audience that they were intending to connect to. So yeah, that audience having their attention, imagination, and their heart captured essentially by the work we did. And I love that. I was really passionate about it. Being creative was sort of, really deep within my soul. And I joined a company, what it would be 25 years ago now. Stayed there for 22 years. As a designer, as a marketing designer. And my job was to produce all these kind of leaflets, catalogs, resources for a sales team. And it was this huge network of independent business owners who sold the company's product and earned commission on those sales. And I got really excited because I thought, I'm going to produce these amazing catalogs and brochures and do all this stuff that kind of excite these people into doing a little bit more than they would otherwise do. That's my job. And what I learned over sort of that time within that company, working with those sort of sellers, was you can give them the greatest tools in the world. You can give them amazing catalogs and put on these big events and incentives and try and excite and inspire them to do something. But if they don't have it within themselves, if they're not connected to that, why am I doing this? What is it about this that's so important? I'm prepared to be brave and step outside my comfort zone. Then things didn't tend to happen. And for me to better understand that, I spent more time with these sellers. Again, coming back to the storytelling, I listened to their stories. What is it that they really wanted? Again, why is that so important to them? What is it going to take to move them to a place where they're ready to take brave action? And so within that kind of journey, I moved from being a designer into more exploring mindset, personal development, business development, leadership. And I absolutely fell in love with seeing that movement from someone being where they currently are to where they deserve to be. And that's basically sort of the story as to where I am now, because I did that more and more and more, absolutely loved it. Long story short, the company I was in, I became managing director of that particular sort of section of the business. But of course, that comes with the admin and logistics and finance and all things that don't excite me.
Yeah.
So after 23 years or whatever it was, I said, no, I'm going to do the things I love. I'm going to stick to that, moving people forward within their stories, but I'm going to do it on my terms. And that's how I became the four fears guy.
All right. That is a
Uh,
great story.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, that's what it's about. Are people doing what they should be doing, or are fears holding them back?
Yeah, quite, quite, yeah. And that's, I think, what really sort of captured my imagination when I was working with these people. These kind of recurring hesitations, things that no matter what their background or what sort of personality or their energy and so on, whatever it was that was holding them back, there was a commonality. These four fears, the same things kept cropping up, and helping them embrace those wobbles, as I like to call them, and again see them make that shift was, yeah, it was incredibly rewarding.
Yeah. And we're definitely going to get more into that. But of course, on this show, we talk about the strengths and needs of introverts and we bust some myths. So you are a fellow introvert. What's a strength that you have because you're an introvert?
It's a really good question. Looking back, and again, as I've mentioned to you, I think I embraced my introversion sort of relatively recently. But something that I think resonates with a lot of introverts is that we're great listeners. We don't necessarily want to be the center of attention. We have great ideas and we can contribute a lot, but sometimes we just get energy from sitting back and absorbing what's going on in the room. And through that listening, I think we're better at contributing. And that's something that, for me, I like to think is a strength of mine. Again, listening to those people's stories, better understanding and receiving that energy from them, that I can then kind of turn back and say, right, let's help you do something about this.
Yeah, and that sounds like that really plays into the very current work that you're doing is that listening to other people's stories and
For sure. For sure. Yeah. And again, just think about my own relationship with sort of introversion. It is a wonderful opportunity just to be in a room with people and be lifted by their energy. I know a lot of people talk about introverts as being, oh, they're better off when they're on their own. That kind of solitude is where they recharge and where they get back on track. For me, not always. I think there's sort of, there's different rooms that give you different things back. And I like to be in a room with people who energize and excite me and give me something to think about.
well, that was my next question. You brilliantly answered it. So we bust myths on this show. And I don't like the definition where people just say, yeah, the main difference is, you know, people drain us and we get our energy from being alone. I think that's so oversimplified. And what you just said is so true. It's like we do need to recharge, sure, but we love ideas and being in the right room with the right people, we absolutely can get energized by that, and it's when we're in the wrong room and maybe the
Yeah,
wrong people or certain activities, that's what really can drain us. And we need to be aware of those things. Maybe sometimes we can have less of those things in our life, but sometimes, even some things we just need to be aware. Okay, I'm going to need to recharge after this. But I love that you said that sometimes you do get energy from certain conversations because we love ideas.
yeah, yeah. And again, sort of playing into another sort of myth perhaps that needs busting. When we're receiving that energy, again, it gives us, I think, the confidence and a little bit of clarity as well to contribute, to give back. And again, there's that sort of belief that quiet introverts will sit there and they don't want to put their hand up. They don't want to sort of speak out or stand out or be the center of attention. I'm one of those. I don't like being the center of attention, but equally, as a sort of speaker, as a sort of coach, you need to be at the front of the room. And I thoroughly enjoy that because in that moment, I'm thinking everything that I've just received, I can turn that back into something even more positive. And yes, afterwards I might need to go and sort of have some quiet time. But again, as you rightly say, David, when you're with the right people, it's a wonderful feeling. It's really powerful.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, absolutely. So that leads us into tell us about your new book that's coming out soon, How to Embrace the Four Fears of Business Ownership.
Sure. So the four fears is the core really of sort of the work I do. It's the premise is that we all have hesitations in terms of what it is we want to achieve and why that's important to us. I've broken those hesitations down into the four most common sort of themes, which are procrastination, perfectionism, imposter syndrome, and that fear of failure. I refer to them as the I'm not ready, I'm not good enough, I don't have time, and what if I fail? And those are the sort of little whispers that our kind of mind monkeys kind of put in our own ears to sort of suggest that perhaps we don't do something today. And the book is essentially introducing those fears, explaining what they are, breaking them down in terms of how actually those fears are nothing more than matters of opinion. And those opinions, that the kind of breadth of that opinion in terms of something like a fear of failure at one end of the scales, at the other end of the scales is sort of your opportunity. Where do you currently sit in that balance on the scales? And what within the conversation we might have can we do to move you away from failure and closer to the belief that instead of I can't because I might get it wrong, I can and I deserve to because the opportunity to get it right actually excites me and is something that is important to me. And that's what the book is really. It's, as I say, it's introduction. It's what are the fears? How do we turn them around? And how do we introduce sort of meaningful change really in your business and also in your life so that you more often than not think, I can, as opposed to I can't today.
So we're going to get into each of the four, but in
Yeah.
general, how do you embrace these four fears? How do you change your mindset around them?
Again, it's very much about clarity and bravery, I think. So that the first piece, the clarity is again, two questions which recur in every single chapter of the book. What is it you really, really want? And the second question, and why is that so important to you that you're prepared to take the brave action needed to make it happen? And that clarity, I mean, we're sort of, digging into sort of similar places in terms of like Simon Sinek's start with why. But if you are connected to that sort of very deep driver that's unique to you, the closer you are to that, the easier it becomes to think actually the risks I need to take, the brave actions I need to take, the things that I wouldn't otherwise do because I'm hesitating, I am more inclined to embrace those and say yes and try them because they are so important to me. It is worth the possible failure, if you want to sort of look at it like that. And as we get into each one, there's kind of different techniques and things, but they overlap actually. The four fears, it's worth saying that there's a lot of kind of sort of they interweave. So it's never as simple as just saying, oh, I think I don't have time. Oh, of course you do. It's much more sort of delicate and personal as well. So it's very unique to each individual.
Yeah, and that's the key. What do you want to accomplish? And we talk about that in terms of introversion too. It's like you can get whatever you want. What is it that you want? And then figure out what your strengths are to get whatever you want. But that's the first thing. And why is that important to you?
Completely. Yeah. I think sort of again the introversion piece plays along quite nicely again from my own experience. And there's a sort of a slightly autobiographical element to sort of my relationship with the four fears. But you're absolutely right. It's that clarity around knowing what it is you want, knowing what it is you need to do it, and finding the way that's right for you to actually make that happen.
Yeah. So what do you say to the person that says they're not ready? Maybe they're starting a business or trying to write a book or something.
So yeah. I mean that the not ready fear is in many ways, as I say, perfectionism. It's the I'm not going to do this thing because it's not as beautiful as it needs to be. It's not as perfect as it needs to be. I've got to spend a bit more time changing the colors and the fonts and all that kind of stuff. I wouldn't say it's a solution, but sort of the approach that I would sort of introduce is this idea of what does good enough today actually look like? Because again, thinking about how the fears overlap, when you say I'm not ready or this project isn't ready, what you're actually saying is it's not good enough yet. And I'm slightly nervous about putting out there in case the reaction isn't as positive as I would like. So, what does good enough need to look like for you today? And as we were sort of talking about earlier, good enough today. Actually, no, this was something I think you mentioned on your one of your recent shows. Good enough today is one thing, and it gives you the confidence to think about what does good enough look like tomorrow. So just having that kind of brave step forward in terms of, I could just talk a little bit about perfectionism actually, because everyone says, oh, there's no such thing as perfect. Again, I think perfectionism or perfection is entirely subjective. And today, perfect might mean one thing to you. It could just be, could be the cup of coffee that I have after we've recorded. And it's just like, I'm feeling very pleased with the conversation we had, and that coffee just tastes great. And I'm like, oh, this is perfect. Something as simple as that. But the pursuit of perfection as a sort of end goal is a very dangerous game to play because you will never achieve ultimate perfection. But the journey, those incremental steps of this is what good enough looks like today, tomorrow it'll be a little bit better, and so on and so on. But each day I'm putting something out there, I'm learning and I'm growing. That to me, again, if you can readjust that vision of what good enough looks like for you today and embrace that, then you're ready.
Yeah. And if you don't do that, is it you're gonna always feel like you're not good enough and you're never gonna start or that thing that you want to do?
Again, because of how the sort of fears overlap. So, as I say, if you're outwardly saying, I don't think I'm ready, as the conversation kind of gets deeper, we kind of uncover that what we're really talking about here is you don't think it's good enough. And therefore, you're not setting aside the time to do that thing, even though you know it's really important. This is a thing that could potentially be the game changer. I don't like to sort of think of it as me telling somebody that, of course, you're ready. Again, this is another sort of really interesting observation I've kind of picked up over many, many years, and I'm sure you'll recognize this too. Everyone outside of your own mind can see that you are good enough, can see that you are ready. They're happy to lift you up. They support you, as you move forward. They'll celebrate your wins and your victories far more naturally than you will celebrate them yourself. You kind of miss or overlook those little successes. So even if you decide not to do something today because you're still convinced that you're not ready, hopefully what the book will kind of introduce, and again the work that I do is around the, but let's just reevaluate that little voice in your head that says I'm not ready, I'm not good enough, I don't have time. Are those whispers true? Are they helpful? There's a chapter in the book which, when I wrote it, I had no idea it was going to end up like this, but it's actually a play. So it's literally a script for a play, and the premise of the play is that we take your fears to court and we challenge them in the court of law to essentially dismiss them, to disprove them. Because as I say, they are a matter of opinion. And typically those fears are born out of an emotional opinion as opposed to a sort of more logical and factual opinion. And if you lean into the cold, hard facts, again, of just how far you've already come, all the things you have achieved, all the successes that you can tick off your list, the thing that you did yesterday that perhaps you weren't ready to do, but haven't noticed that that's brought you a little bit of progress. Suddenly it becomes a little bit easier for the individual to reflect on, maybe I'm a little bit more ready than I thought I was. Maybe I'm a little bit better at this than I thought I was. And again, that's where we start finding that bravery that accompanies the clarity of, well, this is what I need to do. So perhaps tomorrow I will do that thing. I hope that
Yeah.
makes sense.
And this is very related to you also talk about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
What is that and how do we overcome it?
So imposter syndrome, again, there's thousands of books written on it and podcasts and all sorts of things. My take on it again is that little voice in your head saying I'm not good enough. It's the comparisonitis. It's the looking sideways of what will other people think of me when I do this. And in terms of embracing imposter syndrome, again, I think we're sort of exploring that sort of definition of how good am I at this today? Again, embracing good enough and dialing down some of that hesitation of the only person or the only voice that's saying out loud, other people might not like this and this might not go well, is that little mind monkey. Typically, no one else is watching you and expecting you to not be good enough. So we need to, again, compare the kind of the version of the story which is based in fact and the version of the story that's based in emotion, and start introducing this idea to our mind in that the more we lean into the fact, the more likely it is that we'll take the positives from those hesitations. That again, there's a story in the book, and this is sort of my own kind of origin story around sort of imposter syndrome and the fear of failure. I won't tell the whole story, but essentially, at the end of the story, there was a decision for me to make. It was either lean into the emotion of that wasn't good enough, or lean into the fact of that's actually quite a remarkable achievement. I lent into the emotion. Had I lent into the fact, and this is the kind of the beauty of hindsight, what would that have led to? And that realization is something that's kind of again driven my passion for ensuring that when I'm working with clients or having conversations, I try to do whatever it is I can to help somebody lean more into the fact.
Yeah. And while you were talking, I was thinking that we often think more about ourselves than anybody else is, right? Everybody is kind of preoccupied with themselves, and we're more concerned than somebody else is. We're harder on ourselves than others are.
Very much so. I mean, we see 100% of everything we do.
Yeah,
It's like,
right. Yeah.
when you're sort of constantly sort of trying to put your message out on social media, a lot of businesses obviously use social media to kind of enhance their brand and grow their audience. And you can very easily sort of slip into your own mind of, well, that post didn't go very well and nobody reacted to that and oh dear. And it's like, well, you've seen everything you've done. The algorithm is working against you. So this isn't you not being good enough. This is, there's other things going on here, but you're the only one probably worrying about those things. Actually, I mean, interesting, coming back to kind of the introversion conversation around being, surrounding yourself with people who give you energy. That's another kind of way to embrace the fears. Again, it's that sort of those cheerleaders, I guess, essentially, who are reminding you that that thing you did yesterday, that was really cool. Why don't you do it again?
Yeah, yeah, that's key if we can have those kind of people.
Hmm.
What do you say to the person that says they don't have time?
This I always smile at this one. It's kind of my favorite for sort of a slightly sort of cruel reason. The I don't have time fear is the one that I think people lead with. So for all sorts of very obvious reasons, people don't like to open up and share their vulnerabilities immediately. So no one's going to typically put their hand up straight away and say, I don't think I'm good enough. I'm a complete failure. That I don't have time is it's a nice fear to begin with because it feels like it's based in fact. I literally do not have time to do this thing. So you're not going to challenge me too much in terms of why I can't find time to do it. So it's for me, it's that kind of that slightly sort of first hand raised in terms of that. I think I might need a little bit of help here, but I'm not prepared yet to have that deeper conversation. And I think there's sort of a danger with the whole sort of time management productivity conversation because it's very easy for us to sort of turn around and say, well, of course you have time. Everyone has the same 24 hours in the day. If you know what it is that's important to you, just do that first and, stop procrastinating around those sort of, distractions. Just do it. And that kind of just do it mantra can be very unhelpful because there's a deeper reason why we know there's something we need to do, but we're choosing not to do it. And again, it links back into the I don't think it's ready. It's not perfect enough. I don't think I'm good enough. So I'm not going to think about that yet, or I'm going to do my very best to avoid that for now and do something that gives me a little bit of satisfaction, but means ultimately that I don't have to face up to that fear. So when I'm talking to somebody about not having enough time, there's kind of two elements, I suppose, to the conversation. Firstly, we actually do the sort of, okay, let's look at how you are using your time. But again, coming back to that clarity and bravery, if you are so clear on what it is that you really want, it becomes a little bit easier to take the brave action, even though that's the thing on your to-do list that feels a little bit of a stretch right now.
How do you help people get clarity?
It comes back to the listening. It's so much as I can't do this for you. You're the person who still needs to take that action. You're the person who needs to decide what direction you're setting for your business in life and so on and so forth. But letting you have the time and the space to think about that in conversation and just let that flow and let you kind of have those aha moments of, you'll say something. So interestingly, just to sort of give an example, I was having a conversation with somebody I've known for quite a long time or at the start of the week, and they were talking about resetting their business direction. And I asked them what their goal was, and they came up with 4 or 5 different goals. It's like, okay, each one of those goals has value, but which one do you really want? And what is it about all those goals that kind of actually all overlap? Because there's something behind each of those that's a bit deeper, but that pulls the whole piece together. But just by sort of nudging and sort of teasing and inviting the conversation, a person sort of started to find that clarity around, no, it isn't just about the money. No, it isn't about the recognition or the validation. Just no, it isn't about the standing on stage and receiving the awards. There's actually something behind all of this which drives all 3 of those as being elements of that validation. But it does come back to letting that person discover it from themselves. That's the true power. If we find it for ourselves rather than being told it, then it resonates so much more deeply, and therefore it's easier to commit to being brave.
Yeah. And that clarity is so important because I know, that we can't do everything, right? There is a time factor there, and we have to decide what is most important to us and figure out how to accomplish that. And we also have to figure out what's not important to us. And there may be
Yeah,
things
absolutely.
that we're doing that we don't need to do. I
Yeah.
know I've tried to do everything and it doesn't work.
No, no, and particularly when we're sort of running our own businesses and we have to wear all of those hats, and some of those hats really excite us. Again, coming back to sort of energy, some of those hats really kind of invigorate us, and we really enjoy giving time to those actions. But in terms of that greater sort of big business wish, whether those actions actually serve that journey or not is the kind of the more challenging question that we need to get into. And if they don't, then you get into the kind of what I call act, auction, avoid. Is this something you need to act on? Is it something you can delegate? Or, as you say, David, just get rid of it? Yeah, chuck it out of the list and try and forget about it.
Yeah, for sure. And then your other fear, how do we overcome the fear of failure? Or what is the fear of failure and how does that hold us back?
This is a really interesting one. I think this is where that sort of that difference of opinion really kind of comes into play, because the difference between, as I said sort of earlier, failure and danger, if you want to call it that, a kind of success and opportunity, it is that it is that matter of opinion. So whatever you do today, how you view it tomorrow in terms of was that a success or was that a failure, it's entirely your opinion, and it is yours. It's very personal. And in terms of embracing the idea of failure, because failure can be sort of one of the greatest gifts you actually give to your business, because it's a huge learning opportunity. And by viewing a perceived failure, I say with sort of doing air quotes with my fingers, by viewing a perceived failure more sort of logically and less emotionally, and again, taking away the what went well, what could be even better if, and just being a little bit more sort of pragmatic about it, can it stand you in better stead in terms of trying again tomorrow? Because the more emotional we feel about it, and the more we get caught up in the, again, coming back to the imposter syndrome and the that didn't go very well, what would other people think of me when they saw me do that, perhaps I shouldn't try that again. That's the end result. The more emotional we are, the less likely we are to try again. The more factual and pragmatic and sort of sensible, I suppose, we are around the particular experience, the more likely we are to give it another go. And it's where we sit on those scales currently. And again, through conversation and digging into that sort of the clarity and the where you want to go, and building the kind of habits that allow us every day to be more inclined to view something with less noise in terms of those mind monkeys, those emotions, less noise and more sort of sense and sort of calmness and, yeah, curiosity as well, I think is a good word.
Yeah. And Just reflecting back on talking with so many people and my own experiences, learning often comes from failing at something or perceived failure, as you put it, because it's learning, right?
Absolutely,
It's experience that makes us better, and sometimes we're just afraid to have that experience.
for sure. Yeah, there's some. I mean, again, in the book, there's sort of a diagram around sort of comfort zones. I get into it explaining that your next opportunity just sits outside of the where you are in this kind of diagram right now. So there's this kind of perceived barrier within your comfort zone, which you're happy to stay in. But of course, if you stay there, nothing new happens. You don't grow. So you have to reach beyond that line. And what is it that's going to give you the bravery, the motivation, the confidence to try that today?
Yeah, and it's interesting because we do have to get out of our comfort zones, but we also have to change our thoughts around those fears that we have because otherwise you just get out of your comfort zone over and over and over again. And many people have gotten out of their comfort zone, but they haven't changed their thoughts around it. So then the next time they have to get out of it again and again. And I see that too often.
Indeed, and it's sort of an important sort of element that backs all of this up is that building of sort of valuable habits. So again, every time you take that step forward, you use that as a learning experience to give you the confidence to start building the resilience and the momentum to take that next step. Because it's not, every time you step outside your comfort zone, it's not going to be 100% success guaranteed. There will
Right.
still be wobbles, and in those
Yeah.
wobbles, you're still going to have that. Well, that didn't go very well, or perhaps I won't do that again. Again, all those kind of little fears will sort of reappear because we can't cure ourselves of them. We're not going to get rid of them forever because we're human, and part of our sort of DNA and part of our charm is that we are sort of fragile and vulnerable, and that makes us, I think, sort of more caring. I think the lovely positives to take from these kind of hesitations. We want to do better. We want, again, coming back to the sort of the journey towards perfectionism. It's not the destination, but it is those little steps that make us grow and make us sort of better human beings. But there's definitely the need to say build those kind of habits so that you're more inclined when you have that wobble, that next wobble, to still want to move forward as opposed to sort of slipping right back into, sort of retreating into that tiny little comfort zone at the heart of everything.
Yeah. So, as an author, did you have to get over that fear of failure yourself? I know that I did in writing my a book. Did you have to get over that fear of failure?
I didn't actually,
Okay.
and I think it's because what I found in writing the book. I'm not going to say it was easy, and it isn't published yet. So I have got that sort of that fear of no one's going to read it, no one's going to buy it, no one's going to like it. And also, and I was joking with my editor yesterday, you know, I know that when we press print, there's going to be a typo. There's going to be something that when I read it back and I think I need to change that, but that's okay. I'm perfectly comfortable with that because this is just a first edition and there will be iterations. But no, I wasn't caught up in the failure around the book. I think what I've really enjoyed is the kind of whole cathartic experience of taking all this knowledge, all those conversations, all of the stories that I've been a tiny little bit of involved in terms of thousands of people that I've sort of seen make that shift from where they are to where they want to be, and put it all down and kind of reflect on it as I write it. And if anything, I think it's helped me refine what it is I want to do next with the four fears. And again, find that or reconnect to a deeper clarity around why this is important to me, why I want to make this work. And yeah, no fear of failure, definitely a lot of excitement.
That's
So,
wonderful. And part of that,
yeah,
you said, you had it's there might be an error, and that's normal because we are people. And trust
yeah,
me, I understand that because definitely there's probably some error in my book, and you go over it so many times, and you have other people go over it. You have editors, and so yeah, I love that. What was really the driving force to really put out a book for you?
I think. My hope for the book is that it introduces the fears in a way that people will become comfortable with. And again, they themselves will embrace sort of the knowledge that being fearful occasionally is okay. And here are some things that you can do to kind of dial down those fears. As I sort of said earlier, nobody likes to sort of put up their hand and say, I'm feeling really vulnerable. I'm struggling with procrastination. I'm struggling with perfectionism. I'm struggling with imposter syndrome. Those aren't conversations. Yeah, people don't sort of, dive on me when I walk into the room and say, "Hey, four fears guy, I need your help," because these are very sort of deep and personal conversations. In those conversations, we will go to places that mean an awful lot to that person. So it's a very gentle, delicate, sensitive kind of way of working. So my hope for the book is that it just gives people again a little bit of confidence, a little bit of sort of comfort around having these fears is okay. Don't feel you have to get rid of them. As I say, there's no such thing as perfect. It's all subjective. There is a way to kind of lift some of that sort of burden of hesitation. And here are some useful tips to help you do that. I should say, it's a very interactive book as well. There's kind of chapter activities in each section of things. What I really want people to do is just sort of scribble all over it and devour it. One of the sort of things that's really important, I think, when you're talking about sort of mindset and hesitation is it's okay to say these things out loud, but nothing changes until you take action. So again, one of my hopes for the book is it will encourage people to take action, even if it is just scribbling all over it, trying some of the exercises, and having some fun with the ideas that it presents.
What are the common things that people are coming to you with that they are fearful about?
As I say, it is that sort of combination of the four fears. I hope again, this is kind of my sort of big business wish is that those four fears do resonate. And certainly when I'm speaking to people, there's definitely those elements of I don't think I'm ready to make this change. My business has got to a certain point. We need to take the next step. I don't know if we're ready. Is this the right time? And this is why the work that I do starts with the whole mindset conversation, and then we get into sort of business strategy. Because again, once you know what it is that's been holding you back, and you're ready to embrace that and step through the kind of door, then you've got to take action. So what does that action actually look like? But so far, I haven't been surprised by a fifth or sixth fear. Um,
Okay.
you never say never. There's a chapter in the book. One of the things that does crop up, actually, I should mention, some people say, "Oh, what about the fifth fear? This fear of not making enough money." Surely that's one. And if there is a conversation that I have that isn't directly linked to those first four, it normally is about sort of finance. But I would turn that around, I suppose, in so much as what does enough money look like? And what do you mean by enough money? And again, when we kind of get into it, we all typically equate sort of money with success. So the more money I have, the more successful I've been, which therefore means if I haven't got enough money, I haven't been successful enough, which kind of leads us into that I haven't been good enough, therefore I have failed. And it all kind of sort of falls back into those same four sort of root thoughts.
Well, it's definitely important to have enough money. So, that's something
Yep.
that people need to
Yeah,
figure out. And maybe that's your next book.
could be. But again, what does enough look like?
Yeah, yeah, and that's different for everybody, right?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I'm reading a great book at the moment by Bill Perkins, Die with Zero. I don't know if you've heard of that one. But the premise there is essentially when you finally pass, you've no money left on the table because you've used all of your earnings to live an incredibly fulfilled and rich life. Which, again, what does that look like for each of us? That's the bigger question, but it's an interesting premise.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that probably is, if you're doing something different, like yourself, you went out on your own, you do have to think about, okay, well, I have a family to support.
Yeah,
I still need to earn so much. So you just have to not have a fear, but really figure that out, how that's going to work.
for sure. Yeah, because yeah, it, again, it's a very very brave thing to go out on your own. I'm not talking about sort of myself necessarily, but everybody that I've come into contact with who is running their own business. And it's interesting when I sort of first went out on my own, I suddenly noticed just how many of my friends have been running their own businesses for years. It's like, oh my goodness, how did I not see this? These are incredibly brave people who are putting everything, you know, of themselves into these businesses. And I hadn't even recognized it. So that's bad on my part. But but yeah, again, it comes back to hopefully it's that this is something that's so important to me that I will pursue it and give it my absolute best.
Yeah, and and that's where we're right back to is what do you want? What is most important to you? And
Completely.
then how am I going to do that? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Mark. This has been a brilliant conversation. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, not really. I mean, I'm just again really grateful. I love talking about the four fears. Again, coming back to the purpose behind the book, the more we talk about them, the easier it becomes to kind of reduce the impact they have. So no, just thank you, David, for the opportunity to to share the four fears.
All right. And where can people find out more about you and your upcoming book?
The website's really easy, so it's markfranklin.co.uk. I'm all over LinkedIn, possibly too much. See, that's my monkey creeping in there. But yeah, so LinkedIn, Instagram, but yeah, the website, and hopefully the book will be out, yes, in the next week or so. So by the end of February, it should be available to all.
All right. Well, thanks again.
Thank you, David. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you. I hope you take the time to explore other episodes and learn from other amazing guests. Remember, if you're interested in getting to know yourself better, there is now a free Type Finder personality assessment on the Quiet and Strong website. This free assessment will give you a brief report, including the four-letter Myers-Briggs code. I'll add a link in the show notes. And I'd love to connect with you. Reach out at david@quietandstrong.com or check out the quietandstrong.com website, which includes blog posts and links to social media for Quiet and Strong and much more. Send me topics or guests you would like to see on the show. So many great things about being an introvert, and so we need those to be understood. Get to know your introverted strengths and needs and be strong.